everybody? All right. Yeah. Good. Can I tell a story? This is a story. There we go. This is a story of Anansi the spider. It's one of my favorite stories of Anansi. It's called Anansi and the Liars Contest. It kind of goes like this. One day Anansi is walking down the road and he's hungry. Do you know when you're really hungry, when you can feel your belly just kind of roar? And while he's walking, his stomach is growling, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he gets attacked, and he's rolling back and forth. For about 5 minutes, they wrestle, and then finally, Anansi goes to one side, and on the other, he sees a mosquito, a fly, and a moth. And as he looks at the mosquito, the fly, and the moth, they're panting. And Anansi looks over and says, "Why are you attacking me?" And he says, "Because we are going to kill you and eat you." And Anansi looks and says, "Well, you're not doing a very good job of it. Perhaps I will kill you and eat you." So they battle back and forth and they talk, and finally they make a decision. Let's have a contest. Let's have a liar's contest. Whoever can tell the best lie. I mean, the lie is so good that you got to look at the other person and go, "You lying." If you tell a story that's so good that you have to say you're lying, you win. And you get to eat the other person. Now, if Anansi can tell the story and they have to turn to him and say, "You're lying," then Anansi says, "I win." So fair enough, they say. So they begin. Now, Brother Moth is known throughout the land as one of the best liars there ever was. So here's the story. All of a sudden, Brother Mosquito says, "I'll go first." Brother Mosquito says, "You know, when I was just a child, actually before I was even born, my daddy had 40 acres. And as a mosquito, my daddy went and he took a Kaiser blade and he chopped down all that land. And one day while he was chopping, he actually chopped on his foot and cut it real bad. And so before I was even born, I had to go out and help my daddy. And I went out there and I plowed that land. I planted corn. I raised all the corn. I harvested all the corn. And before I was even born, I had so much that by the time I was born, my daddy was a very rich man. And that is my story." And he looks over at Anansi again. They're ready to eat. And Anansi looks over and goes, my. What a good story. And oh, so true. Oh, so true." So frustrated now, they came up with Brother Fly. Says, "Well, let me tell you my story. See, it wasn't that long ago that I was out hunting. And I had looked up and there was a gazelle just running through. And I reached over and got my gun. And I watched him. And I fired. Boom! And then I ran over to that thing and grabbed my knife and I cut him and skinned him up and had him all dressed. And I looked up and there was that bullet that I had just shot coming towards me." He said, "No sense wasting a good bullet." So he reached out of the sky and picked up that bullet and put it back in his gun. In the meantime, he just got ready and was so hungry, he didn't know what he was going to do. So he decided that, man, I'm going to go ahead and just fix me up something right now. So he climbed up a tree. And as he climbed up that tree, he built him a fire at the top of the tree. And he cooked all of that gazelle. He ate every single bit of it. He was so full that he couldn't even climb down. Oh. So what I decided to do was go home and get me a rope. And I took that rope and I came back and tied it to that tree. And I lowered myself down and went on home. And that was my story. They looked at him, and Anansi looked back and says, "Oh, that was a good story. And oh, so true. Oh, so true." Finally, Brother Moth came around, and Brother Moth says, "You know, it wasn't that long ago that I was out eating an elephant that I had just killed. And while I was chomping on that elephant, all of a sudden I heard that old tiger behind me. Realizing that it was old Brother Tiger behind me, I knew that he was coming to get me, so I just snuck around the back of him. And when he got near my meat, I yelled at him, "Roar!" And he turned around and opened up his mouth, "Roar!" And I flew straight in. I flew all the way through his belly into the back of his tail, and then I grabbed that tail and I pulled him inside out. So what was on the outside was now on the inside. And you know what was on the inside of that old joker? It was a little sheep. I looked at that sheep and said, "Hey, why don't we go get some grass and hang out?" And we left that old tiger laying there inside out, and we had a good meal together. And that's my story. Anansi looked at him and says, "Oh, that's a good story. And oh, so true. Oh, so true." And finally Anansi said, "Well, now it's my turn." He says, "This was going on. I was walking through the jungle one day and I found me a coconut. I looked around and I asked anybody, did this coconut belong to anybody, but nobody claimed it. So I decided to take that coconut home with me. You know what I did? I planted that coconut. I woke up the next morning and that coconut had turned into a coconut tree. And it had 3 big old coconuts at the top. So I climbed up that tree and I got those 3 coconuts and came back down. I got my machete and I cut it open. Boom. And when I cut it open, you know what came out of that first one? A mosquito flew out that first one. I said, huh. So I grabbed the second one and I chopped it open. Boom. And out came a fly. Bzzz. Huh. So I took the last one and I chopped it open. And you'll never believe what came out the last one. A moth. So I made the decision. I said, you know what? Whatever's on the inside, that coconut belonged to me. So therefore, whatever on the inside of that coconut also belongs to me. So I decided I was going to go ahead and eat my mosquito, my fly, and my moth. As soon as I got ready to eat them, you know what happened? They flew off into the forest. But you know what? Today is my lucky day. Because here you are. My mosquito, my fly, and my moth. And they looked at him and he said, that is my story. And they looked at Anansi and now they thought about it. Because if they had done like Anansi had done and said, oh, so true, oh, so true, Anansi would get to eat them. And if they had said, you lying, Anansi would have won the contest and still got to eat them. So you know what they did? They all flew away in every different direction. Phew, 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 phew. Anansi looked at himself and he was mighty proud walking along the road, realizing that once again he had proved that he was the best liar in all the village. And that is my story.